Hello, guys, and welcome to the third episode of Art Made Achievable. Like I said last episode, this one is going to be all about colors. So, I found this image on the internet. I just looked up color wheel on Google Images. Sorry, I was adjusting my mic. You can find it as well. And I thought this would be a really good introduction to colors. And the bare bones explanation that I was given in like middle school in my first art class that I ever took. Now, people who are familiar with the color wheels, you should probably skip ahead a few minutes. No problem. People who really don't know anything about color theory, stay tuned. Keep watching. Okay, so there are three colors that we call the primary colors. This is literal elementary stuff, so I assume you know that red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors. Orange, purple, and green are the secondary colors. Red, orange, red, purple, purple, blue, blue, green, green, blue, and yellow, orange are tertiary colors. A tertiary color is a color that's made when you combine a secondary and a primary color. And just a rule of thumb, in a tertiary color, you will always have the primary color's name first and the secondary color's name last. So red, orange, red, purple. Oh, this should be blue, purple. This is wrong. Yellow, orange, green, yellow, blue, green. This isn't super enforced, but it's just what most people tend to do, and it's a good rule to stick to just to make everything a lot easier for yourself. So, this is the very basic color wheel. And the reason why this is useful, if not to document how colors phase into one another, is to show different types of relationships between colors, and stemming from that, different types of color palettes and color combinations that are very pleasing to the eye. So, it's commonly known that complementary colors, e.g., two colors that are opposite on the color wheel, look really good together and are generally two colors that should be paired next to one another or with one another in a piece of artwork. So that would be that's kind of big. Red and green. That would be blue and orange. Yellow, purple. Bad line. Purple. And that would go for the same for yellow, orange, blue, purple, and so on and so forth. That's the very basic introduction to it. But that's not the only type of color wheel based color combinations and color palettes that you'll see. There's also color palettes that use three colors next to each other. There's color palettes that deal with a color and its two complementary colors adjacent colors. There's colors that will use these two in conjunction with its conjoined opposite, and so on and so forth. So, a general rule of thumb is to use the color wheel to decide what some good foundational colors would be when you're trying to evoke some sort of mood or make your painting, your drawing, whatever it may be, really pop. The reason why these opposite colors tend to work so well together is because they contrast really well with one another. If you just look at this super bright green with this very intense red, it doesn't look like it would look super great with one another. But if I hide this and I take a darker, more desaturated red, well, these look really nice together, don't they? You know, a very common color combination that you'll see very often in movie posters and in promotional art that tries to evoke some sort of sentimental value or emotion will often use red or orange. I mean, orange and blue. Orange and blue is very popular, and you'll find that color combination all over the place. So I really suggest you look for that one. This is probably the one you'll see the most in promotional art in video games. I've noticed it a lot. And it's not an accident that you see these color combos all over the place. They really do work. And they really do have this sense of harmony and unity with them. You know, they contrast, they give each other balance, and they work because they're opposites. So I'm going to remove this layer and show this again. Now, I just explained that the primaries are red, yellow, and blue. Yet, so often we see RGB. Let's see if I can bring that up. Yeah. So often we see RGB. Why is that? Well, generally when we're talking about red, yellow, and blue being primary colors, what we mean by primary is that no two color combinations, e.g. purple plus green or blue plus yellow, whatever, can make a primary. You can't combine any two paints to create the paint red. It's just not going to happen, right? Well, that's a specific type of light refraction that develops that type of color, which has that specific relationship and those specific properties. RGB is talking about light. That's why I'm not sure if sorry about that. I'm not sure if Krita has here, this. Okay, so you'll see this a lot in color selectors in a lot of different art programs, but not just in art programs. Anything really that lets you choose a color for something will have this. Typically, it's very, very common. You have the rainbow with all of its color complements all right here, and then you have white in the middle. Why is white in the middle? That's because this is light, and when you combine all colors of light, they culminate into white. That's also why red and cyan are opposites, green and purple or pink are opposites, and blue and yellow are opposites. Because when we're dealing with light, these two are opposites. But remember, the color wheel fundamentals still exist when we're talking about color in terms of art, but in terms of light, these two are technically opposites. So if you're wondering why those things are the way they are, that's why. Something else that we should really talk about is shading and filters. I'm going to go into the very basics of shading because I think it's relevant to color and how color and color manipulation can be used to show dimension. So, let's paint a little ball, and I know I paint circles every episode, it seems. I'm just always painting circles. Okay. So if I paint a circle, I make a new, actually. Okay, I was gonna try to get fancy with this. There's no need. I'll just paint right on here to make it as simple as possible. So we all know that when you have a colored object and you paint on that object a dark color and you keep getting darker and darker, that it creates it creates the illusion of shadow, right? This image appears to have a shadow, although it's a flat object, so it can't really have that type of dimension. We manipulate the way that our eyes perceive color in such a way that we can convince our brains that it has dimension, it has legitimate shape. There. And this is very fundamental, very basic. And one of the first things you should really know when dealing with art, painting, drawing, and painting, especially from life. But did you know that you can create this same illusion, if not a more convincing illusion, if you use a color's complementary color to shade? It will feel more lifelike. I'll demonstrate that. I will I haven't configured my tool thing yet. I really should do that. So I'll draw my blue ball again. Definitely not as nice as the first time. It's getting worse. Whatever. Okay. So I have my ball, and I want to give it some dimension, just like the first time. So this time, though, instead of just making it flat, adding or taking away black, adding black or adding white, which, by the way, adding black is a shade. So this is just a hue. Color is hue. So this ball's hue is blue. This is a shade because it's a hue plus black. This color is a tint because it's a hue plus white. So tint and shade are terms you're going to be hearing. That's what it means. A shade is a dark version of a color, and a tint is a white version of a color, lighter version of a color. That's really all that means. Helpful to use those that kind of terminology. But if I brush on hints of this opposite color, a tint of the opposite color, it will create this much more. And I'm not demonstrating it very well because I'm not like seriously trying to paint. But it creates this illusion. It makes it feel like it has more permanence in the world. It makes it feel more real. It gives it more dimension, which that's the whole point of a still life. That's the whole point of illustrating in this way, is to give in a flat object real dimension. It's often helpful to do what I'm doing here, which is keep layering your colors. Constantly shift back and forth and layer, and you will get, that's probably too late, and you will get this blending effect that more closely mimics how true shadows and highlights work in real life. Now this not the greatest examples, but I think you get what I'm trying to depict. It feels more convincing and more real, and I'll get more into this with better, less hastily drawn examples later. But this is again just an introduction on why complementary colors are useful and have a place in the discussion of art. So, this was just the introduction to colors and how complementary colors work and how they affect the colors that you're working on. One other thing that I think would be nice to get into right now, again, just an intro. I think next episode is going to be the main episode on this, but as I like to do, I'm going to introduce a concept right now and then expand on it in my next episode. So, we have these filters and settings that we don't really know what to do with yet. We haven't discussed it, we haven't really talked about it. Well, I think I'm going to talk about the color specific filters and adjustments that you can make and leave you with just a very bare bones introduction to some other things that you can do and explore through this same menu. So, if I want to contrast, if I want to adjust the contrast and brightness, you can see some interesting things happening. There are presets that I haven't downloaded because I forgot, but I will, and I'll show you those next episode. But this toys with the contrast. This inverts it, by the way, and puts the contrast way up. This keeps intact the color composition, but again puts the contrast way up. The contrast is the difference between two colors, two shades and tints, I guess. This turns obviously the regular blue, which is already kind of a darker color, very dark, and the darker parts even darker, and the lighter parts into solid white. Contrast seems to have a unique, very special effect on white, it seems. That's just how those adjustments work. I can adjust the color balance. Now here we see the cyan, magenta, yellow. That's not RGB and that's not the primary colors that we've learned. I think I mentioned this in the first episode. Cyan, magenta, yellow is part of a color group, I guess, that's called CMYK. That stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and that's the colors used to print. So, if you were going to print an image that you would paint in Krita or Photoshop or whatever you're using, you're going to want to convert from RGB to CMYK. And as you can see, this color wheel functions in CMYK. C for cyan, Y for yellow, M for magenta, and there is no black on this color wheel specifically, but there's the black. If we go back to filter, adjust, and color balance, I can adjust the cyan for less or more cyan within the shadows. I mean, more red, more cyan. I mean, this is adjusting between CMY and RGB, more magenta or more green, more yellow or more blue. See, notice how when I adjust this, the top image, the top sphere isn't being affected whatsoever or just barely being affected, because all of these colors are blue. Watch what happens to these shadows. They go from being brownish to blue. So if I wanted to convert these shadows to a more yellowish tone, I could. Somewhat ugly, but you know. Midtones, shadows are these. Highlights are these. Midtone is everything in the middle. I can adjust the midtones for more green, more magenta, more blue, more yellow, and again with the highlights. green, and magenta. I can also desaturate, which removes the color. Desaturating will take all of the color out and convert whatever image is being shown into grayscale. That's it. Levels. I wanted to get into this, and I think I mentioned this. Levels are the amount of black, white, gray, or colors, RGB, in an image. If I put the markers very close together, all tending towards black, I'm making the black marker the more predominant color, the shade, I guess, the more predominant mode, then you get mostly black. You get a predominantly very dark image. If it's spread across the board, then you get a very middle between setting, making it an abundance of white and tending everything all squunched up into this corner will make the more white you put in, the more white you'll see. Now this bar is almost all white. This image is almost all white. This is the input level. E.g., the colors, this is a hard concept to explain. The colors that are being filtered into the monitor, well, not the monitor, the colors themselves, I guess, is the best way to put it. How those colors represent themselves on a monitor and how those colors themselves show themselves in different forms of files. It does matter, but we won't get into that. It's not important, like many things, it seems. So this adjusts the colors themselves. It changes the actual color composition of the image. This changes the output level, which does a similar thing, but the input level deconstructs each color and changes it completely, while the output level kind of puts a filter across the entire image, as you can see. It's not a filter in essence, but that's the best way I can describe it. And I think you can detect the difference from when I was adjusting it to show you. Now this is the same as the curves before, but with RGB. So the alpha is the darkness, and the lightness is the lightness. Yeah, I'm sure you could have assumed that, but we already kind of got into that, so no need. So this is the red adjustment channel. If I put everything into one corner, then it's going to be predominantly, if I put everything in this top corner, then it's going to be predominantly red. But you can see how how weird this can become. If I go back in and close that because we don't need it. If I select red and put the RGBA, which the RGBA controls the entire image itself. This seems to I keep creating points by accident because I'm paying attention to the image and not to what I'm adjusting. So this creates the contrast of the entire image. It's really similar to what we were doing before. It's just you can do that from this panel. We want red. So the more that I tend to this upper left-hand corner, the more red I'm injecting into the image. The more I tend it towards this bottom right corner, the less red there is. I'm going to keep it without, I'm going to try to keep it without red. I keep doing that. I so apologize. See, be like me, don't adjust from the channel, but I'm going to take all of the red and all of the green out. Notice how the highlights disappear once the green is gone. And how all of this disappears when the red is gone. This I was going to mention more, like colors, but really, you can transfer colors from a reference image onto an image that already exists, and you can adjust the color alpha from manually. It's not something we're going to get into right now because that's super complex. We can minimize and maximize the channel, also complex. Something I don't fully understand, and I'm not going to try to pass off any knowledge that I don't have the full understanding. So, anyway, this has just been a simple introduction for colors, but it's getting to be like 25 minutes, 26 minutes, and I kind of don't want this to be super long, so I think I'm going to cut it right here. The fundamentals of colors in the color wheel: primaries, secondaries, tertiaries, complementary colors. Remember, oops, maybe I should get a dark color. These can be a color combo, these can be a color combo, these can be a color combination, this can be a color combination. Use the color wheel to your advantage and use it to create compelling and interesting looking artwork. Things will look more real and have less of a fake feeling to them if you use complementary colors as a means to shade and to tint them. And you can adjust colors and the color balance and contrast from filters. And we'll get more into the filters. I'm really excited to talk about the blurs and the embossing and edge detecting and the really cool weird stuff that you can turn your art into. But like I said, it's getting long and I kind of have to go anyway, so yeah, that's gonna be the end of this episode. I think I stuttered a lot, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. So if you liked this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next week.